Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 6th July 2017. The first article, before the sluice gates close. This is related to displacement due to big projects. The word used over here, it is the distributive justice. Try to understand from your 11th class political theory concept what is distributive justice. So, in the name of good for the greater, there are many of the people are getting worst affected because of these dams, and there is no favorable treatment towards the weak and marginalized, and it is affecting the distributive justice. And the second thing is, if you take Narmada Control Authority's decision to raise the Sardar Sarovar Dam's height, is going to displace many of the people in Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. So, government has a responsibility to rehabilitate and resettle the people over here. Here, rehabilitation, it means providing for alternative livelihood, and resettlement means rebuilding the communities. India's history with regard to these two, it is abysmal. So, in this context, if you take the Narmada or Narmada River, there are many projects which have come up. Supreme Court from time to time have warned on the rehabilitation and resettlement. So compensation has to be provided to the people who are project affected. So here the government is playing the numbers game. So how the government is defining the people who are project affected? If you carefully observe, the people whose houses are being lost and whose agricultural land got submerged, these are being considered as project affected. And where they are rehabilitated, they are not rehabilitated as a community, but as individuals. It means that these people are being given the places or alternative land in different locations. So it means there is no scope for the rebuilding of the community over there. So in these circumstances, all the people are not being rehabilitated. Let's take in a village. An agricultural laborer may not have a land, but he is still project affected because he is losing his livelihood. And second is, even project affected people are not getting their due share because of the illogically planned resettlement plans. That is what this article is trying to talk about. Next is speaking the language of change. This is about World Development Report 2017. Let's understand World Bank how it has spoken before with regard to development is concerned. It has equated the development with westernization, technicization, and financial flows, capital intensive development. These are the various things World Bank has stated as means for development. Now, World Development Report 2017 has changed this language. So, what is the emphasis over here? Now, if you take Amartya Sen's view, he says that doing away with the unfreedoms, that is what is development. On the other hand, World Bank till now believed that enlarging the economic choices, that is what is development is about. It is narrowly defined from the economic perspective rather than from the rights perspective. So, 2017 report has moved from the earlier stand of enlargement of economic choices to removing the unfreedoms, which are removing the various obstacles that are causing or obstructing the freedoms of the citizens. That's what is the perspective it took. And it has clearly given a greater emphasis is necessary for health, education, social infrastructure, etc. And third important stress over here is on democratization. So, it has given certain comparative statistics to show that how democratization can lead to better development. If you take the Amartya Sen's article itself, Poverty and Famines, whenever the democracy has taken the roots, wherever it has taken the roots, the number of incidences of the famines have reduced in those countries. India did not face a famine after independence. One of the reasons we can state it as free media and democracy. Similarly, it has compared across the Africa and stated that the countries which have democracy and multi-party democracy, competitive elections, their infant mortality rate has drastically reduced. It shows that the upward pressure that can cause through the electoral politics. And finally, it also emphasized on the need for gender equality. So these are the emphasis of the World Development Report 2017, which is remarkably different. Then what might have changed this? Because World Bank's competition has come up. India, China, these are no more dependent on the World Bank's finances. They are looking for alternative financial institutions. And the second thing, World Bank, there is a social movements which are causing huge pressure on the World Bank to change its ways. Many times World Bank's tactics are criticized as anti-sovereign, anti-democratic, etc. So World Bank is bound to change to gain its respect among the people of the developing countries. Protecting prisoners. Now let us understand, if a person has committed a crime, he can be put in jail, his liberties can be curtailed. It does not mean all his residual rights can be taken away by the state. It means my Article 21 to that extent is compromised, but however my right to equality, right to food, right to religious practices, all the residual rights I can practice. Now in this context, the prison inmates, they enjoy various human rights. That's what is our point. But however, if you take under trials in the jails, and most of the people who are in jails are under trials and they are mostly staying there for their inability to pay for the bail expenses. And inhumane conditions, packing the jails in excess numbers, and there is deep congestions in jails. And among that, in jail torture which has been given, a torture met by the inmates, all these are the critical examples for the human rights violations. So in this context, Union government has developed a manual on jail practices which has to be followed by every state government. So we need to understand that the people who have committed the crime, they also enjoy the rights, and the state has the responsibility to protect the rights. Jail reforms are very much critical for this particular thing. And the next is missile diplomacy. It is about North Korean crisis. Now, every time a North Korea tests a missile or a nuclear bomb, US gives a warning, and then US pitches China in. This has become a routine exercise these days. Now, let me put it this way. The sanctions are threat of grave consequences. It is not having any impact on Kim Jong-un's regime in North Korea. Probably it appears that Kim Jong-un's entire diplomacy or foreign policy centers around the United States of America, irritating United States of America. I can put it as Trump has got the right opponent on the other way. Sorry, just off the record remark. Now the second thing is, in South Korea, after the previous president, Ms. Park Geun-hye, has left after impeachment, you got Mr. Moon, and Moon is very much interested to take forward the talks. And second, the stick and sanctions which the United States believed in from Obama to present day Trump is not working. Now, Trump tried to pitch in China and expected a good cooperation from China. In lieu of this, he praised Mr. Xi Jinping and also offered the trade concessions, but nothing has moved forward. So, the only way forward for the United States, where it can improve its options, is to have a direct talks with North Korea, and having a favorable person for the talks with North Korea at the helm of affairs in South Korea is the way forward, or is a welcome sign for the Trump administration. Now let's go to austerity. Now whenever there is an economic crisis, how the governments react, let us see. Whenever there is a recession, obviously the demand is bound to fall. So to revive the demand, the governments go for fiscal expansion. The negative consequence of this fiscal expansion is the inflation. If this inflation is unchecked, obviously it will kill the entire industry in the long run. That is the reason why once the fiscal stability is achieved, once the economic stability is achieved, slowly governments taper in the inflation. They try to tighten the nooses to control the inflation. So this is where comes the austerity measures of the government. So the Western economies have started the austerity measures after 2008 crisis. And in this, to reduce their fiscal deficit, They have reduced the costs incurred on the public services like police, fire safety, etc. A recent London's Grenfell Towers fire accident clearly shows how to what extent the services are being curtailed and how is it putting the danger of people's lives into danger. So it is also reflected in elections in UK. If you take Miss Theresa May did not get the expected majority, and Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party has got the more than expected majority, that clearly shows the austerity is not in favor of the citizens of UK. That's why the governments have to rethink on their austerity policies and have to look for the other avenues to provide for the better civic services. Now it's raining loan waivers. Now, what are the problems or permanent crisis? Now, whenever you talk about the loan waivers, this year I'm expecting a question on fiscal discipline, loan waivers. They can ask you a question like this. Are the loan waivers a solution for the agricultural crisis existing in India? So, you can add the value point, Raghuram Rajan, which has said, the loan waivers are a symptom of a bigger underlying disease. And loan waivers also have a moral hazard where the people will be bound to take more risks believing that the loan waiver is going to come up when they agitate. And second is, farmers also identified their strength of numbers to pull up the governments to offer the loan waivers. Populism is playing an important role over here. And fiscal discipline or financial discipline also comes down as the people who are expected to pay are the wealthy farmers also stops paying their loans to the banks, and it will create a vicious cycle. Realize the de facto realities of Jammu and Kashmir. Here remember the 4 R's. What are the 4 R's? One is restraint, renunciation of violence, resumption of dialogue, and most importantly, respect for LOC. So these are given by Bill Clinton for solving the Jammu and Kashmir crisis. They are restraint and renunciation of violence, resumption of dialogue, respect for LOC. So one way, the solution for the Jammu and Kashmir in the long run lies in both the parties respecting for line of control. So in this context, the recent controversy that United States has used the word India-administered Kashmir appears inappropriate as the ground realities reflects in that particular statement. That's what the author tries to talk over here. Now, let's go to the Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel. And what are the MOUs signed? You know that Israel has pioneered this water conservation methods. Drip irrigation, it being a desert, it was able to produce so much of the output in the agriculture. Agricultural productivity, how it has to be improved, how water conservation has to be taken up, we need to learn from Israel. So India has signed an MOU, that is UP, Jal Nigam and the Israel Water Ministry has signed an agreement on this. And with regard to the satellites, with regard to the space, electric propulsion of the micro satellites and agreement is signed. And the third thing is recently atomic clocks in the news and cesium clocks are being replaced. Even with regard to this, there is an MOU with Israel. And after that, 40 million research fund, India-Israel Industrial Innovation Research Fund, I4R, is also being launched, where 20 million will be contributed by India, 20 billion will be contributed by Israel. And there is a strong statement to fight against the terrorism and information sharing, intelligence sharing. This is also being spoken about. The most important point you need to remember in this visit is this. There will be a strategic partnership in the non-security issues. In spite of defense, Israel being the second largest defense partner to India, India did not go for the defense strategic partnership in defense deals. The next important article, it is related to selection of election commissioners must be transparent. Here you need to understand the Article 324 subclause 2. It clearly states that the election commissioners have to be appointed as determined by the parliament by law. So it means Article 324 subclause 2 expects the Parliament to make a law as it was not done till date. It was the President on the advice of Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers is appointing the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners. So there is a vulnerability. If Parliament do not prescribe a law, then obviously it may be subjected to misuse by the executive of the day. So that's why it has to be plugged in. In this context, you need to remember Tharakunde Committee, which has come up in 1974, which has recommended that the President of India shall appoint the election commissioners on the advice of the collegium or a panel headed by the Prime Minister, Chief Justice of India, and also the Speaker of Lok Sabha, leader of the opposition in Lok Sabha, CJI, and the Prime Minister. These three people together have to appoint him. That's what is been given by Tharakunde Committee. So next is, let's go to the news page. Re-examine the collegium system. That's what is the Supreme Court judge has spoken about. Mr. Karnan's episode has exposed the weaknesses of the collegium system in India. So in this context, the collegium system is expected to be revisited. So NJAC Act was passed by the Parliament, but however it was declared as unconstitutional as it infringes on the judicial independence. In this context, Justice Kehar has clearly stated that the existing appointment process have to be revisited, but NJAC cannot be a solution in that matter. But collegium system also have its own weaknesses because no records are being maintained for the meetings and the women are not been finding a sufficient space in the judicial process. And above all, the Karnan kind of people are also entering into the judicial system. This is what is being stated over here. Now, let's get into the business page. Here, Purchase Managers Index, very much in the news. Try to understand it from the prelims perspective, how this has been calculated and what is the inferences you can take from this index. Next is the notes. I have prepared this notes. It is available in, it will be posted in likes.in/civils-prep. And thank you very much. All the best. Workload is very much heavy for me these days. And I have to do this GS mentorship answer correction every day. I have to correct some 30-40 scripts. And it is taking a lot of toll. So that's why make sure that your video comes to you or try to log in at 9 p.m. to see the video. Make it as a part of your schedule. Thank you very much. All the best.